So relationships usually have a major theme. And when we're talking about a Pluto-themed relationship, this is one of those that get like the worst reputation in astrology circles. So as opposed to platonic relationships that are supposed to be non-romantic and non-sexual in nature, Plutonic relationships are deep, intense. They could feel very destabilizing in our lives because they are so overwhelming. And to get a real sense of how those relationships can feel, we first have to be introduced to the character of Pluto. If you're not super familiar with Pluto, hi, welcome. If you are a Plutonian yourself or you have any kind of tidbits that you'd like to add, please leave them in the comments. I'd like to have some input from other Plutonian people because the more you share with me, the better my picture of Pluto becomes. If you are attracted to a person who has a lot of Pluto in their chart, then this video might still pertain to you or you might still be interested and get something out of it. I always use Rex Bill's kind of dictionary of astrological terms because I like to ground my explanations in something that is like based on some type of research or fact, right? I don't like to just pull it out of my brain and just give it to you. Busting out the old Rex Bills, Pluto is said to rule the bad, betrayal, calamities, degradation and depravity, demons, hidden forces, lust, black magic and witchcraft, mysticism, oblivion, passion, rebirth, and reincarnation. And if you just heard that list and you're like, Denise, what do those things even have to do with each other? I know they sound like they have nothing to do with each other, but if you're a Plutonian person who is very aware of yourself, who has a lot of self-awareness, you'll know that there's an underlying theme there. We're really talking about the hidden dimension of life, kind of like the vibration of the universe that is more on the darker side. When we have a lot of Pluto in our chart, when we live beside Pluto in our life, we come into contact with all of these things at one point or other. When you are in a Pluto relationship with somebody else, when their Pluto is fucking you up, it's going to be a period of your life that can be very dark. And this all depends on your own natal chart. It reminds me of this saying that says the transits won't provide what the natal chart doesn't promise. So even though a person is not a transit in your life, they kind of are. Their planets are transits to your sky. And so their influence in your life is going to depend a lot on the kind of person that you are. If you are a person with heavy Scorpio, heavy 8th house, heavy Pluto energy in your chart, and then here comes the Pluto of your life, you're about to get fucked up. You're about to be taken on a whirlwind. You're going to go under. You're going to go to hell and back. You're going to have a great time because if you're a sick bastard like that, then that's kind of like your cup of tea, right? But if you're not that type of person, I don't think you would get that sucked in unless you're having some type of transit and period in your life. We all have seasons in our life where certain things will be more attractive to us. So if for whatever reason you're having a very strong pull from Pluto and then this person comes into your life, this can have a very destabilizing effect on you. The thing with Pluto is that you have to surrender, but also you have to know when to stop and when to get out. So these relationships can feel very binding, they could feel very dark, and they could feel very, I'm going to use the word, they could feel very toxic. And what I mean by this is something toxic is something noxious that is very pervasive, right? That is having a harmful effect. And so these relationships can have that feeling of having a harmful effect. But for me, really, when I call something truly toxic, it's when the person feels like they can't get out of it. Like they will not get better. They cannot get out of the situation. They're stuck in what I call a Pluto loop. If you would like a video on that, let me know. If you feel like you can't get out of the situation, like you will not survive, that's pretty toxic to me. That's why I say that Pluto relationships can feel so pervasive because they'll bleed out into other areas of your life to the point sometimes, depending on your chart, that you'll feel like you can't function psychologically. They're very psychologically affecting. And depending again on the natal charts we're talking about, the people will take turns being the one in charge of the Pluto. If it's what's called a double whammy, like if your Pluto is interacting with their personal planet and their Pluto is interacting with your personal planet, you could have this bouncing back and forth. It's kind of like you have a beach ball and I'm going to screw with you and I'm just going to get so deep in your heart and then I'm going to throw it to you and then you're going to do it back to me. This can be the reason why these relationships are so hard to get out of, because just when one one person is kind of getting out from under, okay, like things are going to get better, I'm not going to be sucked into this relationship, the other person sucks them back in, and then they just take turns. And that's why they could be so binding, and you could go months and months and months, sometimes years, with a person like this. I don't think, honestly, that these are, if Pluto is the main theme in the relationship, I don't think that they could last years. I hope not, because how are you sleeping at night? As I said, they can be very destabilizing to your life. And so if they're not counterbalanced by a lot of heavy, like I don't even know what could counterbalance this in a positive way, because I want to say Saturn, but Saturn is another heavy energy. And even though it has its positive, with the darkness of Pluto, it could feel like too much. It's like a heavy burden to carry. And as I always say with Pluto-themed relationships, it could feel often over and over like your heart is being put in a blender and being served up to you. And that is what the person is giving you. But I know it sounds like I just talked about a bunch of negative things. Well, I'm here to tell you that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is light at the end of the tunnel with Pluto relationships. We have to understand that all of the planets have a purpose, right? And the purpose of Pluto is essentially to purify you. And Pluto purifies you by exposing all of the things that you hide and all of the things about you that are just very vulnerable, that you wouldn't want other people to know. It's a very psychological energy, and it reaches you on a very, very deep level to where it feels like this person has such a deep soul hold on you. You know, Pluto rules like witchcraft and sorcery and mysticism. This is a very spiritual sort of connection that you could feel like you have with somebody, but yes, it's spiritual, but it's also dark. And that is the thing that people are like, the Plutos, like my Pluto people, hi guys, you know, I come in peace. We Pluto people can get offended and be like, well, it's because you're talking shit about Pluto and it's not that negative and like blah, 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 blah. I think we have to be realistic and just be very honest with ourselves and with the fact that we get into relationships that can be very painful. And as I always tell my clients, you wouldn't have it any other way. You know, you like it. If you're calling your relationships toxic, I'm always just like, you're a part of that relationship. You know, you're the common denominator. You know, if you're getting into multiple relationships like this is why astrology is so useful. If you see that there's a Pluto situation going on with you over and over again, usually you have a couple of Plutos in your life, depending on what your chart is. So if you have Pluto Moon, Pluto Venus, anyone who interacts with your Moon or your Venus is going to have a Pluto Venus or Pluto Moon connection with you. And those are going to be very intense. So the light at the end of the tunnel will come when you reach a certain point of separation with this person and you get some distance. Once you figure out that you will actually not die if you separate from this person, because that's how it could feel. Breaking up with this person, or sometimes you're not even in a real relationship, you're just in some type of bind with them. Just creating some distance feels impossible because you feel like, I'm never going to be this close to anyone ever again. Why would I want to give this up? I've never felt so enveloped by somebody's soul. I've never felt so swallowed up whole before. And some of us sick people, we like that feeling, right? We like to feel like we are consumed by somebody else. And so the thought of detaching from this person can feel like, I'm never going to experience this again. Why would I want to separate from this feeling of just complete, like being taken over entirely? Why would I want to let go of this? It makes you feel so alive, depending on your chart. If you're watching this video, you know exactly what the hell I'm talking about. That fear can keep you in that loop and you're just stuck. And guys, I'm here to tell you, like, it is not a healthy place to be stuck. I have yet to see a Pluto relationship end in a positive. They're going to get offended. You guys are going to get offended. Hear me out. There is, and honestly, if you've had a Pluto relationship, okay, let me qualify this. So I have not seen yet a relationship that is heavily Pluto in theme that also like ends up in something healthy and happy and that has a lot of stability and longevity. If you are in a relationship like that or you know somebody like that, please let me know in the comments, because not only is it enlightening for me as an astrologer, but it also gives other people hope. And I will say hope is a very cruel thing sometimes, especially if you're stuck in a really bad Pluto situation. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but You know, if you want to share your stories in the comments, please do. The light at the end of the tunnel with Pluto relationships is that once you've been purified, once your heart has been put in a blender, made into a very healthy smoothie and served to you, you are going to be a completely different person, because what you realize is that you didn't die. You survived that separation from that person. And that in itself is very revivifying, because it could almost feel like you're dying the entire time you're in the relationship and you're going back and forth with this person. And so once you see that you didn't die, you're okay, that in itself is very revivifying, as I said. But also, you're going to understand so many different dimensions about yourself that you didn't know before. And that, depending on the kind of person that you are, can be very just over. I'm a Sagittarius. I love to learn about myself and other people. If you could see the silver lining of all of the teachings and all of the kind of experience that you get out of a relationship like this, it's one of those things that I always tell people, it's a once in a lifetime experience, maybe twice. Do it, live it, but know when to cut it off. If you'd like a video on when to end a Plutonian relationship, how do you know if it's really over, leave me a comment letting me know if you'd be interested in that. And as I said, Scorpios are going to be the ones that are most attracted to this. I just made a video on Scorpios and their addiction to heartbreak. If you haven't seen it, I think you would really like it. If you like this video, I'm going to put it here so that you can go there. If you'd like to get a reading, I offer a limited number of readings every month because I'm working on my workshop. If you'd like to know more about my classes, if you'd like to learn astrology and how to use it in a practical way to improve your relationships and get to know yourself better, go to my website, because I have new things that I'm offering now aside from readings. So if you don't want a reading, but you'd still like to work with me somehow, go to my website, puroastrology.com. And guys, thank you so much for being here. I love you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.